All right. Well, welcome back. We've got Karl Hughes is with us again, and he's agreed. I've twisted his arm to stay around and share some insight into maybe a couple of books of his that he's read that have really inspired him. So, on the spot, Karl, tell us about one or two books that you've read, what it was about them that really resonated with you. Really keen to hear.
Yeah, so I'll kind of go two different directions because I think both directions are important in starting a business. The first one is a little more inspirational and like feelings based. So there's a book I read right when I started Draft.dev called Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, and she's the writer of Eat, Pray, Love. Now, side note, I've never read that book or have much interest in that kind of fiction, or not. It's a memoir and not fiction, but her journey in Big Magic is super interesting because it's about becoming a writer, which is an extremely difficult, like long road. I mean, almost nobody becomes a successful New York Times bestselling author. It's just such a rare thing. And so many people try to write books. So what she talks about though in it is that really being a writer is about coming and showing up every day for many, many years and getting almost nowhere for many, many years. And then all of a sudden things just start to compound. And that's what happened to her. She kind of shares that in her career and other writers that she's met's career, and how it really ties into like, you just have to believe that this is worth pursuing regardless. So I think this is true, like super true in running a business as well. So that's the first one. The second one I always recommend to new entrepreneurs is the E-Myth, E-Myth Revisited. Michael Gerber goes through the process of systematizing a business. And this is one of the biggest challenges a lot of entrepreneurs have, is letting go of day-to-day tasks and execution and getting into the big picture. So they always say working on the business is the goal, not working in the business. And in theory, that is, everyone knows that saying, but in practice, actually doing it is super hard. But I think Michael Gerber's book is a really good intro into how to think that way and to build your business in a way that is essentially franchisable, is the way he puts it, but a system that can be repeated by other people, not just yourself.
Now, I have to ask a question about that. I want to get your point of view as a fellow business owner. As you say, we all hear about working on the business, not in the business. Have you experienced, or are you aware of people around you that are business owners that get comfort from being busy and they excuse themselves from working on their business because they're too busy, and they kind of get sucked into this, well, I'm really busy, so that's got to be good mentality, and therefore never actually drag themselves out to actually work on their business? Is that something that you've had, and what about other people around you?
Yeah, absolutely. I find myself doing it still, and I know it's a thing, and I see it in other people, and I can critique it there. What's been really helpful for me to get some perspective there is having peer group and mentor groups to help like sort of lift me out of the day to day and say, are you really working on the best thing you should be working on? So just tangible example, I was doing a lot of fixing of articles for one particular client that was really picky about some things, and I was just dedicating like a day every weekend essentially to doing this. And I had somebody just kind of bluntly tell me, somebody I respect, like, is this really worth it? Like it's really like he's running the numbers at me, and I'm like, yeah, this is stupid. This is not a good use of my time in the when the grand scheme, if you think about, if I spent that Saturday instead either doing something maybe I wanted to do with my family to relax, or even just spending 2 hours of that Saturday working on the business, on big picture things, and maybe hiring a person who could do what I was doing there, how much better would that be and more scalable, and just something that wouldn't lock me in forever. So I still struggle with it, and every entrepreneur does probably, but it's important to get out of that as much as you can.
And another thing that kind of dovetails into that too is that people can get caught into this desire for perfection to get things right. So like kind of the story you're saying is about, just trying to tidy up articles to get it absolutely 100% for the client versus, okay, it's at 80%. That's good enough. If I'm going to achieve a big picture, then 80% has got to be it. And I think, like, say, for instance, for what I'm doing here with podcasts, right? And with videos and that too, there's this sort of, do you just don't start doing it until it's absolutely perfect? Or do you get out there and have a crack at it, know that you're not going to be perfect, but you're going to work on it and you're progressively going to get better? I've come from the naturally want to be a perfectionist, but I've had to drag myself because I think the truth that the real answer is in the latter. That 80%, just get out there and do it, do what you need to do, and get better and better. How's that been for you?
I agree with you. I think the quote unquote right way for most people is probably to just get out there, start it, and then iterate is what they maybe call it the cool buzzword for this, but basically just keep making your business better over time. Yeah, absolutely. It's hard. I think it's hard too, because a lot of there's a lot of glamorized stories about people like Steve Jobs is a perfectionist, and so he would make engineers go back to the drawings 10 times to make the insides of a MacBook look beautiful. And that's a romantic story, but I don't think that's necessarily the reason Steve Jobs got to be like where he was. I think there's a lot more to it. And you look at his early products, they were pretty crummy and basic, and that was like they had to get something out there, and they did. So it's kind of like a lot of times entrepreneurs kind of throw themselves too far out in there. Definitely letting things go is a challenge, but I agree, absolutely essential to kind of like get this point to where you've got 80-20. The 80-20 rule applies here. And then the other thing is you have to be willing to like let go of some customers that expected that 100% every single time. They just may not be good customers, or if they really do expect that.
Yeah. Okay. Just to wrap this up, I could keep talking to you. I'm sure we could keep diverting onto different things. But let's get back to books here. So, okay. So do you read a physical book, a Kindle or Kobo, or audio book, or all three? Tell us, what's your preferred medium?
Mostly Kindle and audiobooks. I every now and then somebody sends me a physical book, and then I do power through that sometimes. But it's harder because I'll just say, like, it's logistically tough to read regular physical books when I'm married, and so we both get into bed at night, and it's like I can't have the light on too long, or else this is going to be a problem, right? So I might read Kindle books longer because I can get away with it. And then having a dog and a baby to take care of, it's nice to have some background book reading going on for something. So that's my preferred mechanism at this point. But I do miss being able to take the notes and highlights and stuff like I did back in the day when physical books were more common.
Yeah. And how often do you get to read?
Oh, I read something every day. Now, I split between fiction and business books. And so I don't, I try to go through 30, 40, maybe 50 books some years. So, getting through a couple a month usually, or a few a month. Yeah.
No, that's pretty good. I love reading, but I tend to, when I go on holiday, I'll read like 4 or 5 books within about 4 or 5 days. But then during the rest of the year, I struggle with, I get to bed and I'm tired and I just want to go to sleep. So
I have months then where I'm like, I'm not getting any reading in. Like it's too much going on, and it's like there's no time. But I didn't actually start reading until after college much. I went to engineering school, and you don't read books in engineering other than like textbooks and stuff, because we don't even have to take English classes. So anyway, I got out of college and I was like, I kind of miss reading. Like I didn't think I would, because it was all, you hate it when you're a kid, but now I really do enjoy it. And it's one of those things that I think has been helpful for getting perspective from other people that I wouldn't normally be able to connect with in real life.
Yeah. Well, just to show you the book I'm reading at the moment, you should be aware of this. It's 1,000 pages though, 1,000 pages. So on Ulysses S Grant. So any American should be fairly impressed that I'm reading about a very famous member, a very famous person in American history.
What's your big impression from it so far?
Oh, I'm really, really enjoying it so far. Really enjoying it. I wanted to read it because the sort of broad brush sort of interpretation of him was that he was a bit of a drunk, and he kind of just won the war because he had the numbers, that Robert E. Lee was an amazing general and Ulysses S. Grant wasn't, and so on. I don't know so much about his presidency yet. I haven't got to there. I really relate to the guy and what I'm reading. To typecast him as a drunk is grossly unfair. and is ignorant to the realities of what they had to go through. And the way in the middle of nowhere, they were all drunk. He was actually less drunk than most of them. It's just that when he did drink, he was probably more full on, but he was sober more than the rest. And in terms of his skill as a general, I think he was a phenomenal tactician, an amazing general, and deserves a lot of credit for it. And I think, yes, Robert E. Lee was a good general too, but he deserves his credit. So I'm really enjoying it. I'm coming from an impartial point of view. I'm not from the southern states or the northern states.
Right.
But yeah, I relate to the guy. I really do so far. It's a very good book. It's well written too. So
yeah.
Really enjoying it.
I feel like that's the mark of a good biography, when you identify yourself in the characters to some extent. It's like they've made that person who lived so long ago that we'll never know really, the day to day what they were like. But they've made it so real that you feel like, oh yeah, I could see that challenge that person has. I love that.
Yeah.
That's great.
It was a tough life. They had it tough. I mean, you had to go from the East Coast to the West Coast in the middle of nowhere in this fort, snowing half the time, no family there.
Yeah, and you get shot back then. I think there was like a 60% mortality rate from infection. So you're basically just going to die of infection if you get shot. Like they amputate your leg or arm. That's all they could do. Yeah, it was tough.
Yeah. So there you go. So that's a good book. But I like reading a mix of business books and fiction and non-fiction, historical stuff like that. So I for some reason I really enjoy American history. So I've read a few American sort of historical books. Yeah. All right. Well, anyway, I know let you go. We could talk for ages and get totally off topic.
Yeah.
But we are supposed to be staying on topic. So yeah, really enjoyed talking to you, Karl. Really enjoyed it. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you as well, Paul. Thanks again.
All right. Cheers for that.